It all started the day we buried my grandfather. The sky was unusually gray, heavy with silence, as if even the clouds were holding their breath. People kept saying he lived a complete life, but no one really knew what that meant behind closed doors. To me, he was just Grandpa, the man who used to let me sit beside him while he wrote numbers in his old leather notebook, never explaining what they meant, just smiling when I asked too many questions. After the funeral, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place waiting for a verdict. That's when my uncle spoke up. He gave everything to me, he said firmly, standing in the middle of the living room like he already owned it. His voice didn't shake, not even once. The house, the accounts, everything. Your grandfather made it clear. I remember looking at my mother's face. She didn't argue. She didn't even blink. Just that quiet, tired expression like she had already lost something long before the funeral. But something inside me didn't settle, because I knew my grandfather, and he never gave anything away without a reason. The days that followed turned strange very quickly. My uncle began organizing things. Papers disappeared into folders. Locks were changed. Conversations became shorter, colder. Every time I asked a question, I was met with the same sentence. Your grandfather trusted me with everything. Trust is not something you just declare. It's something you prove. One night I was sitting alone in my room, staring at an old photograph of Grandpa. In it, he was standing outside a bank holding a small envelope. I had never noticed it before. The envelope had a stamp I didn't recognize. That was the moment something clicked in my mind. Banks keep records, real records. And truth doesn't vanish just because someone speaks loudly enough the next morning. I went to the city branch of the bank where Grandpa had kept his accounts for as long as I could remember. The building was quiet. Too quiet for something that held people's entire lives in numbers and files. At the counter, I explained who I was. I need information about my grandfather's accounts, I said carefully. The clerk typed for a moment, then looked up with a polite but distant expression. I'm sorry, she said, but those accounts were transferred 2 weeks before his passing. Heart tightened slightly. Transferred to whom? She hesitated, just a fraction of a second. To your uncle. That was the first crack. But cracks are how everything starts to break open. I walked out of the bank feeling like the ground beneath me had shifted. If everything was transferred, why did Grandpa still keep his old notebook hidden in his desk drawer? That night, I returned to his room. No one had touched it since the funeral. The air still carried his scent, old books, mint tea, and something faintly metallic like coins. I opened the drawer. There it was, the leather notebook. My hands shook slightly as I opened it, page after page of numbers, dates, and bank codes. But one page stood out. A separate account, one I had never heard of, and beneath it a handwritten note in Grandpa's careful handwriting. Not everything spoken is the truth. Check what is recorded, not what is claimed. Breath stopped. He knew, somewhere deep down, he already knew something would happen the next morning. I returned to the bank, but this time I didn't go alone. I brought the notebook. The same clerk looked uncomfortable when I placed it on the desk. I need you to verify something, I said. She sighed and took it to the back office. Minutes felt like hours. When she returned, she wasn't alone. A senior officer followed her, holding a printout. This, he said slowly, is not matching the earlier transfer record. Throat went dry. What do you mean? He adjusted his glasses. The original account structure shows 3 beneficiaries, not 1. Uncle's name was not the only one. There was another line, a trust account registered under a legal protection clause, and the signature wasn't fully matching. My hands tightened. Someone altered it, I asked. The officer didn't answer directly. But silence answered enough. That evening, everything changed. My uncle called a family meeting. He was calm, too calm. Sitting at the head of the table like a man who already owned the outcome. I don't know what confusion is spreading, he said smoothly, but everything was done legally. Your grandfather trusted me, that's the end of it. I placed the notebook on the table. The sound of it hitting wood was louder than his voice. For the first time, his eyes shifted just slightly, but I saw it. You say everything was transferred to you, I said quietly, but the bank says otherwise. A pause. The kind that feels like air being removed from a room. Then he smiled, not warmly, not kindly, but carefully. Banks make mistakes. That was his defense. But Grandpa didn't believe in mistakes. He believed in records. The next step came from an unexpected place. A retired bank manager, someone who had worked with Grandpa years ago, contacted me after hearing about the dispute. You should come, he said. There's something you need to see. I went the next day. He opened a locked file cabinet and pulled out a sealed envelope. This was marked for release only if a dispute occurred, he explained. Inside were original account documents, unaltered, unmoved, untouched. And there it was again, the trust account. But this time it included a condition. No single beneficiary may access full control without joint family verification. My uncle had never been the sole owner. He had only made it look that way. The confrontation that followed didn't happen loudly. Happened quietly, in a legal office filled with papers and cold air. When the documents were laid out in front of him, my uncle didn't speak for a long time. He just stared. For the first time, his confidence didn't look natural, it looked constructed. "You think this changes anything?" he finally said. "Yes," I replied. "It changes everything." Lawyer slid another paper forward. Unauthorized account modification is a serious offense. That was the moment everything in him shifted, not anger. Not denial. Something closer to fear. Weeks later, the truth became official. The accounts were restored under the original trust structure. My mother's name was added as co-beneficiary. And my uncle, he was removed from financial control entirely pending investigation. But what stayed with me wasn't the legal outcome. It was something smaller, more personal. One evening, I found another note tucked inside Grandpa's notebook. Just one line. Truth doesn't shout. It waits. For the first time, I understood what he meant, because truth had been there all along, hidden not in secrets, but in records no one bothered to question. And maybe that's what I learned most from him. People can speak loudly. People can claim ownership. People can even rewrite stories with confidence. But numbers don't lie. They simply wait to be read. Thank you for listening to Emily Calm Stories. Sometimes the quietest truths are the ones that change everything.